incredible video out of Thailand. Look at that. What appears to be a giant meteor blazing across the sky Sunday night in Bangkok. Dashcam footage captured the fireball flaring overhead as drivers hit the brakes to try to catch a glimpse. Look at that. There it is again.
What's going on?
As you can see, it turned the night sky a dramatic...
A streaking fireball became a Halloween sensation in Central Europe. This is what it looked like from several angles in Gdańsk, Poland. The International Meteor Association says it received nearly 70 reports from all over Europe Saturday night. There are more meteors to come. The torrid meteor shower is expected to peak from November 5th through the 12th.
Had an earthquake overnight not too far from Phoenix, Arizona. Happened about 1:29 a.m. And, you know, this is not a part of the country where we actually get many earthquakes. I know you might think, look, down in the desert Southwest, we got some terrain, Arizona, probably a lot of earthquakes down there, but that's actually not the case. There have only been 11 earthquakes magnitude 4.0 or higher in the history of Arizona, at least in modern recorded history. No reports of injuries. There were some people that felt it in Phoenix, even though it was about 50 miles north of town. Some people in Scottsdale felt it as well, but overall it doesn't look like it was too big of a deal.
Oh my Lord! How many cars are in this accident? I count like 12 cars.
Deadly storm struck southern Portugal Sunday, swamping the seaside town of Albufeira, 120 miles south of Lisbon. The storm swept away cars, uprooted trees, and washed away roads. The water was up to the ceiling in some buildings. Authorities found the body of an 80-year-old man Monday who got caught in the swift-moving waters. His submerged car was found with one of its windows broken. Rain is expected to fall in the area through Wednesday. I'm Danielle Banks, the Weather Channel.
In a year full of unusual weather events, this one ranks right up there. A powerful cyclone is about to slam into one of the most arid deserts in the world. Take a look. Well, this storm is churning towards an Al-Qaeda-controlled city in Yemen. This is what it was like when it passed an island along the way. Well, let's bring in Tom Sater for more on this cyclone. Has Yemen seen anything like this before?
Yemen has never had a tropical storm make landfall. If you go back and look at records, go back 1945, they're not really reliable. Their greatest natural disaster was an earthquake, and that was in 1982, and it took 1,700 lives. Ranking number 2 was a tropical depression. Just a strong little tropical depression that took over 90 lives. This is going to rank easily number 2, if not number 1. They've never seen something equivalent of a hurricane or typhoon make landfall. So unusual. And we still have a well-defined eye, which means it's keeping its power. And as it moves in toward the Gulf of Aden, we've got 400 ships come down through the Red Sea. So again, when it was at its peak, it was equivalent to a Category 4, which ranks Chapala as the second greatest strengthening storm that they've ever seen in the entire Arabian Sea. Overall, the Indian Ocean has about 5 cyclones, but most of them are in the Bay of Bengal. But when you take a look at this region, very dry, arid, their infrastructure is limited to, stones and mud clay that they use to build. So any rainfall is just going to deteriorate this region. Already, Al-Mukalla, that is a very important seaport. It is the capital of the Yemeni coastal region. There's over 530,000 people live there in those stone clay huts. Now, again, look at the winds. We're up to 240 kilometers per hour. Already, tropical storm force winds are affecting this area. It's going to make landfall late Monday night local time, overnight into Tuesday morning. It is going to drop so much rain, it could easily drop 3 or 4 years worth. Even tropical storm force winds will head over toward Djibouti. This is something we have never seen before. Again, they have never had this much rainfall on the coast for an entire year. Al-Mukalla picks up maybe 50 millimeters. They're going to get a staggering 250, maybe 300. Take a look at this. This is 2 to 3 years of rainfall for this region. Some areas will have 4 years worth. That means massive mudslides, debris flows that will look like rivers. Let me show you a Google image of Al-Mukalla. Look at the mountains to the top, and this is 530,000 people. Again, there are some structures that will be able to withstand this, but it's the mud flows that we're going to find making their way down from the mountains. If you want to look at a side-by-side comparison, we can take this full for everybody. The strongest storm was Ganu, 270 kilometers per hour. Chapala only 20 kilometers behind this, 20 kilometers per hour. Now, notice all these storms, the Fet and Ganu, they all moved to Oman. They were up to the north, the UAE, Iran, Pakistan. Nothing like this has ever affected the country of Yemen. It may take a couple days to get some information from here, but again, this is a powerful storm we've never seen.
Okay, and again, this unusual weather, we're reporting on it as climate changes. I think we're going to keep on seeing these phenomena. Thank you. Thank you.
The first observations show a remarkable beaching. Personally, I think they are all from the same family. The first big fact we can confirm is that there is a large dominant male, which is dead, and a female, roughly of the same age, which is also dead. For me, it suggests that these animals are migrating. I think that the male or female, or both, died out at sea, and all of the group drifted at the same time. They washed up on the beach last night or yesterday evening, considering how far up the beach they are, and they were stranded as the tide went in, and there was no longer any lift from the sea.
Welcome to CBS This Morning. An American spy satellite may help solve the mystery of what caused a Russian airliner to crash. CBS News has learned the satellite detected a flash of heat over Egypt's Sinai Peninsula Saturday when the jetliner vanished from radar. Wreckage is spread over miles, indicating the plane broke apart at a high altitude.
Investigators today will begin analysis of the aircraft's data and voice recorders. They could shed light on what brought down the Airbus 23 minutes after takeoff from Sharm el-Sheikh, killing all 224 people aboard. Alan Pizzi is in Cairo with new details on the investigation. Alan, good morning.
Good morning. The plane's owners insist it wasn't their fault. Russian officials are saying it's inappropriate to link the crash to Moscow's military actions in Syria, and the hunt for clues grinds on.
The puzzle of what caused the crash got a new piece with the detection of the heat flash by the U.S. infrared satellite. If the flash was from the plane, analysts say it could have been caused by an explosion in a fuel tank or engine as a result of mechanical failure. But a bomb still cannot be ruled out, according to U.S. Director of National Intelligence James Clapper.
Well, we don't have any direct evidence of any terrorist involvement yet.
In an exclusive interview with the BBC, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi dismissed claims by an ISIS affiliate that it brought down the plane as propaganda. This is one way to damage the stability and security of Egypt and the image of Egypt, he said. The definitive answer probably lies in the black boxes, the cockpit voice and flight data recorders, which are described as being in good condition. Analysis of them is scheduled to begin today here in Egypt. Russian search officials said emergency services units started the third stage of the desert operation, expanding the area to 12 square miles. Even as they gather evidence and passengers' belongings, another plane carrying back bodies arrived in St. Petersburg, the ill-fated airliner's scheduled final destination. Officials there said at least 10 bodies have been identified, but warned that the process of identifying all the victims could take several weeks.
Here in Egypt, the U.S. Embassy has extended its travel ban for staffers in the Sinai Peninsula to include the previously permitted resort of Sharm el-Sheikh. They say it's a precautionary measure until the outcome of the investigation is known. Gail?
We have some breaking news rolling into our newsroom this afternoon. Britain has now suspended all flights in and out of the Sinai Peninsula, in and out of Egypt, out of concern that a bomb brought down a Russian passenger plane there on Saturday. This is information just coming in. The new information is confirming that it was, in fact, a bomb that ripped apart this airplane on Saturday. U.S. official telling CNN today, just a short time ago, again, this was unfolding just as we came on air today, that the crash was likely caused by a bomb planted by the terror group ISIS, based on intelligence. Once again, this is coming in from intelligence that was gathered before and after the tragedy on Saturday. Even so, some new clues today are raising even more questions about all of this. Crews have found the plane's tail section about 3 miles from the rest of the wreckage. Investigators say it shows no sign of a fire, and if there was an explosion before the plane went down, they can't be sure. But today they are confirming that, in fact, some sort of bomb brought down this airplane. We'll stay on this story for you as we get new information.
Tonight, in this new propaganda video, ISIS is again claiming credit for downing the commercial airliner, calling Russian leader Vladimir Putin a pig and warning he will pay a, quote, high price for his actions in Syria. The group offered no proof, and intelligence analysts tell CNN they don't find the claim credible. But sources say the U.S. has not ruled out the possibility of terror. Several competing groups have threatened Putin since Russian troops began pouring into Syria, something Secretary of State John Kerry warned in a recent interview with CNN might happen.
If he's going to side with Assad and with Iran and Hezbollah, he's going to have a very serious problem with the Sunni countries in the region. And that means that he could even become a target for those Sunni jihadis.
2 weeks after Kerry's warning, Russia's security service claimed it foiled a terrorist attack linked to ISIS on Moscow's subway system. Days later, both ISIS and al-Qaeda's Syrian affiliate al-Nusra Front called for jihad against Russia for a spate of airstrikes aimed at anti-Assad groups. And while he didn't mention the crash in the Sinai, overnight, al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri issued this call to arms, ordering lone wolves to attack all countries fighting Muslims, including Russia.
The Russian intervention in Syria has turbocharged the global jihadi movement. Historically, nothing has unified this movement more than their shared confrontation with Russia.
And tonight, despite U.S. sources saying there is satellite evidence suggesting an explosion could have brought down the plane, Russian state media, controlled by Putin, said Russian experts have found no trace of explosives or any kind of evidence that a bomb went off.
And as Justin said, we have some reporting that says that there's reason to believe that, regardless of who was responsible, that there was some, and the British have said that there was some type of explosive device on the plane. So can you say that that is why you instructed personnel not to travel to the Sinai?
I think there were several reasons why. And again, it's not uncommon for us to...
It's pretty common. Uncommon.
No, it's not.
It's pretty uncommon just because there is a plane crash to suggest to personnel not to travel to that area unless you have reason to believe that there was some type of malevolence involved.
There have been, over time, and at least, there have been, over time, extremist concerns in the Sinai. It's not new that there have been concerns about extremist activities in and around the Sinai. That's not a new development. In light of this plane crash, our embassy made the decision, as it is their responsibility, to restrict, in this case, U.S. government employees from traveling to the Sinai. And I think until we know more, I think that's the prudent thing to do. I mean, why wouldn't you do that?
I mean, it's the prudent thing to do, too, but then you're saying not to jump to conclusions. But it sounds as if, even though you haven't reached an actual final conclusion and the investigation is still going on, that you are leaning into the idea that extremism could have been involved.
No, absolutely
Otherwise,
wrong.
you would not. That is very uncommon, John, to instruct personnel not to go to an area of a plane crash.
I can appreciate that you don't agree with me, Elise, but I'm telling you...
I've been covering the State Department for 15 years. I know every time you instruct employees not to go somewhere, and I assure you that it's very uncommon.
I'm not disputing your vastly higher intelligence than mine.
I didn't say I was a higher intelligence, but I have a very long institutional memory.
I'm not disputing your long institutional memory or the fact that you've got more experience here at the State Department than me. What I am disputing is your contention that we issued this security warning because we strongly believe that there was a certain cause to this crash, a la, some sort of terrorist activity. Wow. Just not the case. Hang on a second. Just not the case. They did the prudent thing. They do what our posts do around the world every time when there is some security concerns, even when, especially when, we don't know exactly why something happened. In fact, that's even more reason to restrict movement. You don't want people going into potential harm's way because, God forbid, you're wrong, and you let them go. And there is something more to it than you thought.
It sounds as if you think that there is something more to it.
We don't know, and because we don't know, we're doing the safe thing. No, how do you know we know?
Organizers of the rally say that more than 10,000 students took part. The angry demonstrators say plans to scrap grants will prevent poor students from entering universities. The leader of the opposition Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, has backed the demonstration. Corbyn had earlier said the plans for education cuts would lead to, quote, scapegoating and the deportation of international students.
I, Justin P.J. Trudeau, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, her heirs and successors. So help me God. I, Justin P.J. Trudeau, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Prime Minister, so help me God.
A nuclear-powered U.S. supercarrier stalked by a Chinese submarine. Tonight, CNN has learned a Chinese attack sub recently tracked the USS Ronald Reagan, a massive carrier with 5,000 American servicemen and 90 aircraft on board off the southern coast of Japan. A U.S. defense official says the sub followed the Reagan closely for at least half a day. A former carrier group commander has seen this firsthand.
What could happen when ships operate close together is there's the potential for misunderstanding or the potential for a strategic miscalculation. Some person cuts off the other one, ships can collide. We've had cases where people didn't understand intent, where gun mounts were trained.
The U.S. official did not say how close the Chinese sub came to the carrier, but says it was submerged the entire way. There's no indication the sub made threatening maneuvers toward the Reagan. According to the official, the U.S. and Chinese commanders did not communicate with each other. The Chinese vessel was a Kilo-class fast attack sub.
It has torpedoes and it has the ability to operate quietly.
The U.S. official says anti-submarine aircraft were used to track the Chinese sub. Those would likely have been attack helicopters.
They would make sure that the submarine knew that we've got eyes on you.
The U.S. and China have been engaged in a dangerous Cold War-style standoff over China's construction of man-made islands in the South China Sea. The U.S., which views the area as international waters, fears the islands could be used as a military outpost. China says the islands and those waters are theirs. Just a couple of days after the submarine incident, a U.S. warship sailed just 12 miles from the construction of the islands. Later, a top Chinese admiral warned his U.S. counterpart of the dangers of a miscalculation. Analysts say it's all part of China's new strategy of aggression in that region.
They're expanding their submarine fleet at a very fast rate. They're building a new submarine base off of Hainan Island. They would like to be a primary strategic actor and a shaper of their own security environment in the region.
Thanks, Renee. Only on 10 News, a couple recorded the unnerving moments for them on a flooded street in Lemon Grove.
Yeah, a man and his girlfriend didn't know what to do once they started floating. 10 News reporter Jared Aarons joins us live. And Jared, first of all, is everybody okay?
Yeah, thankfully, Jason, Virginia, everyone's fine. The driver, John Hill, as well as his girlfriend and fiance were all inside this car when they hit a wall of water. You can see it's still soaked, and if you look underneath the car, down at the chassis, you see branches and leaves and all sorts of junk hanging from underneath. Hill tells me he swerved to avoid a branch in the road, and that's when the car got overtaken by the floodwater.
Yeah, you're not deep enough water. Waves, there's actual waves. We're surfing in the car.
And we are surfing right now. And my battery, it hit my battery.
It hit your battery?
It hit my battery. I am now just floating.
Are you kidding me?
I am just floating here
just floating down at Federal Boulevard. You can hear the shock in everyone's voice as they begin to float away. Hill tells us the water at one point got as high as his windows and his engine died. Other cars in the area faced the same problems. The fire department came to rescue stranded drivers and to tow away the cars that wouldn't start again. Hill says he looked under the hood of this car and everything was wet. He did get it started enough to drive it back to here. He says it died a few times on the drive, and also that his engine didn't sound like a purring kitten anymore. Said it sounded more like a grunting hog as he drove it home. Live in El Cerrito.
A new NASA study is stirring up a heated debate about Antarctic ice and how fast it's melting. Contradicting most other studies, NASA's top glaciologists claim the latest data shows the continent is actually gaining more ice than it is losing from climate change. Jay Zawali says heavy snow accumulation in East Antarctica is adding enough ice to outweigh the losses from melting glaciers. Even he acknowledges sea levels continue to rise. The new findings fly in the face of previous NASA and United Nations studies, some as recent as last year. But NASA's Zawali claims his data are based on improved models of measurement. But while the debate goes on, sea levels go on rising. I'm meteorologist Dominica Davis, the Weather Channel.
What about weather that's out of this world? Well, officials are working to make sure that we have a plan in case of a very crippling space weather event. We're going to bring in your space. We are your space HQ. So let's bring in Scientific American Executive Director. That's Fred Goodall. And Fred, let's dig a little bit deeper into this. When we talk about space affecting our weather, can you let our viewers know exactly what we're diving into, what we're talking about here?
Yeah, this is a different kind of weather. So rather than rain, or which is water, snow, rain, we're talking about charged particles that come from the sun. So think of it like electrons, protons. Think of it as electricity, and it's day to day we get a constant stream of charged particles, and that's what makes the northern lights. And they're very beautiful, and they don't normally cause much harm. But every once in a while, the sun is a cauldron of electromagnetic forces, and every once in a while it belches a big cloud of charged particles our way. And this can be very disruptive, and we get these from time to time. But once every few hundred years, we get a really big one, and that's what has people concerned. In 1859, there was an event that caused telegraph lines to explode.
My goodness.
In the U.S. and Europe, and this was pretty inconvenient back in the 19th century. But you can imagine, with our current dependence on all things electronic, a storm like that would be devastating.
Absolutely.
And I really mean catastrophic.
Very, very quickly, we have like 30 seconds. So you're talking about something that could really push us back to, say, the Stone Age for months at a time without.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it could take out power grids, communication satellites, and that sort of thing.
To our viewers at home, how do you prepare for something like that?
Well, fortunately, the White House has a plan put together, so there's not much we can do to prepare. It's sort of any kind of disaster planning. But the White House has put together a plan to forecast, do better forecasting, to protect against vulnerabilities.
In yesterday's elections, Ohio rejected legalized marijuana. Many were opposed because it would have given exclusive growing rights to just a few investors. Houston voted 61% to 39% against an ordinance to ban discrimination in housing and employment based on age, sex, or gender identity. Omar Villafranca reports the gender identity part overwhelmed the issue.
The measure was called the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance, but opponents dubbed it the bathroom bill and made the name stick through a series of ads that claimed women and children would become vulnerable to sexual predators in ladies' rooms.
Protect women's privacy. Prevent danger. Vote no on the Proposition 1 bathroom ordinance. It goes too far.
The ordinance made no mention of bathrooms, but it was the inclusion of gender identity that opponents like Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick seized upon.
And I'm glad Houston led tonight to end this constant political correctness attack on what we know in our heart and our gut as Americans is not right.
Houston Mayor Anise Parker, who is lesbian, had endorsed the measure.
This is a calculated campaign of lies
designed to demonize a little understood minority.
17 other states and 200 municipalities, including 5 major cities in Texas, have similar language banning discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Jared Woodfill helped organize opposition to the bill.
When the people finally had an opportunity to express their will on it, to show how they felt about it at the ballot box, they overwhelmingly said no to the mayor's personal agenda. They said no to her bathroom ordinance.
Lou Weaver is transgender and a community activist.
Right now I'm disappointed, but I also know that it's not over, that I'm going to get up and I'm going to continue this fight. I'm going to continue to educate about this, and then we will win.
Already, some groups are calling for a boycott of Houston businesses if the measure is not overturned. And that could be significant, Scott, because Houston is in the running to host the 2017 Super Bowl.
Omar Villafranca reporting tonight. Omar, thanks.